There are about 1 million pygmies living in the central region of Africa today, and there are also ordinary-sized humans living together. Why is that extraordinary? It shouldn't be. It looks similar to what we see today. And so my view is simple. These bones are fully human. It falsifies the ape man story. It's exciting being a Christian. We can make sense of the fossil record. You can trust the Bible.
Hi everyone, it's Candace Nordine, and we have a new episode of the Debunked Files today. And I'm going to bring on my co-host, Mr. Carl Kirby, because Carl, we are going to be talking and debunking some ideas about who?
Lucy.
Okay.
Hey, I'm telling you, I'm geeking out on this one because I've been talking about this for a long time, and now all of a sudden I'm finding out that some of the things that I've been teaching may not be accurate. And I take it serious. I really do, Candace. You know my heart on this. I'd never want to knowingly deceive anybody. But I was introduced by a very good friend who recently passed away, Dr. Ken Funk. He introduced me to Dr. Chris Rupe. And I watched his video on human evolution, which is an area of fascination, an area of study for me for a long time. But his information on Lucy rocked my world. I mean, to the point that I took it and shared it with a bunch of people and said, guys, we need to look at this because this is going contrary to what I see going throughout the quote unquote creation community. And I think it's important that we go after. So I'm excited to get to geek out on this one and push some questions towards Chris to really help myself grow as well. But Dr. Chris, thank you for joining us. And I'm excited. I mean, we've waited a long time to get this one to happen. It's been so busy with your schedule, our schedule, but we finally get to do this. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm very humbled and honored for this opportunity. Like you said, this can be a very controversial subject because this is a fairly new view. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, I think first thing we need to do is, who in the world is Lucy? Some people might be sitting there saying, who's that? And it's not the old famous, TV show, but Don Johansson in 1974, 73 found the hat on knee, but in 74, he found the bones that you see there. And this became the most famous of our supposed evolutionary ancestors. And from those bones there, boy, we've seen all kind of stuff. I mean, take a look at some of these reconstructions that we see here. And Chris, I got to point out to you, that bottom left-hand corner, is that a proud woman or what? I mean, look at the look on that lady's face. And she is a proud woman. And you know why she's proud? I want you to look at the pecs on her man. I'm telling you right now, Chris, if I had pecs like that, I would demand that my wife looked at me every day like that. And so we have these kind of reconstructions. And this next one here, I mean, look at this neck. From the neck up, I got to be honest, that's an ugly woman. But from the neck down, that's a totally human body walking there, making the human footprints. And then we have, I love this one. Take a look at the glamour shot. I mean, that's a good looking woman right there. I mean, so all of these reconstructions, all of these pictures, all of these images have gone out to the world, Chris. And I think that they've deceived us many times into thinking that they've got something that they may not really have. So I turn it over to you. What say you? How accurate are these reconstructions that we're seeing? Was Lucy a female? I mean, that's the way we see her being depicted.
Yeah, so there's a lot there. And regarding the gender, there has been some controversy, but that's largely now outdated controversy. There was earlier debates about, is Lucy really a female? Some researchers said, well, maybe it's actually a male based on the hip, and therefore we should rename it Lucifer. But the consensus today seems to be that it is a female, has very wide hips, typical females, and I don't see the problem either way. For me, I'm more interested in what is Lucy. And as a creationist, we want to know, is this a legitimate missing link? How do we sort through this if this really is a creature the way that museums show it? I mean, look at museums. They're showing Lucy with a very ape-like skull, but from the neck down, very human-like skeleton, human-looking feet, human-looking hands. And for years, I had issues with that interpretation. And, I followed the example of other awesome ministries and thought that Lucy could just be an ape, a quadrupedal ape like gorillas or chimps. And I thought the evidence was probably consistent with that. But then I dove much deeper into the evidence, not just going by what other people are saying. I actually went to the primary sources, and I found some compelling data, some shocking evidence that really threw me for a loop. And I struggled with it for several years. And it was something that nagged at me because what I was seeing, my eyes were telling me these features look human, fundamentally, distinctly human. And I kept thinking, so why are creationists saying this is a chimp-like hip, for example? And that really put me on a path of trying to uncover this. What's going on here? What are the bones? And my
Hey, Chris,
conclusion
I
now
got
is very
sorry to
yeah. Go
cut you off there, but I wanted to throw in there. I felt the exact same thing. I got to be honest with you. My mentor, who has since passed, when I talked with him on these things, was like, "This looks like a human hip. I mean, it really does. It doesn't flare out like the chimpanzees." And yes, they did some manipulating on the cutting the bones and all that kind of a thing. But when you just look at it, it's like it looks like a human hip. I'm embarrassed to tell you that I never took it to the next step like you did. So I'm extremely happy that you took and dug me. And look, let's be honest here. As Christians, we have to go and dig. We have to know the truth. And I am embarrassed that I did not go any further. I didn't follow my gut on this. I stayed and said, well, these are the experts. I'm not a Ph.D. in any of these types of things. So maybe my poor eyes don't see this. So I want to congratulate you on going and digging. And what is this compelling evidence? What is it, some of the stuff that you found that just backs up what you're saying?
Yeah. So maybe we should just start with the hip then, and we get into more details later about how they found the bones and all that. Yeah. So the hip is fascinating. So that was really what clued me into this different view of Lucy. And when I studied hips and got photo atlases of primate hips, I realized, wow, Lucy's hip looks nothing like any living primate. And that was the moment I was like, this is something I need to consider here. And let me just show you some pictures here. So here we have a picture of a chimpanzee hip, and if you notice, the chimpanzee hip is from a frontal view is very stretched out in a way compared to humans. It's very elongated. Right. And you'll notice the sacrum, which is the bone that holds the two hip bones together. And the hip bones, by the way, are called the innominate. So the innominates are held together by the sacrum. And the sacrum in this picture you can see is very narrow and very elongated. That is true of all primates. They all have that very distinctive, narrow, elongated sacrum. Humans, on the other hand, it's more like a heart-shaped, it's more broader, it's wider and shorter. And that's important because that means our hips, the innominates, are separated. They're more widely separated, which puts our femur bone, the large leg bone, at an angle over our knees. It gives us what's called a valgus knee, or high carrying angle, which positions the knees and the feet directly under the center of gravity, so we can walk with smooth, upright bipedality. But notice though, the key difference between chimps and humans is not something that any trained anatomist needs to understand. A fifth grader can tell the difference between a chimpanzee pelvis and a hip pelvis just by showing them a few examples. And in every case, they'll say, if you just show them a bunch of human pelvises or a bunch of ape pelvises, they'll be accurate to 100%. It's just that clear and obvious. Yeah. Now, for some reason, though, when we look at Lucy's hip, we, as creationists, we tend to think, well, what is it? I don't really know anymore. It's like, why don't you know anymore? It's because we've been locked into a group think that says Lucy must be chimp, to the point where we're ignoring basic human anatomy. So if you look at this picture here, I'm showing you a picture of a chimpanzee hip compared to Neanderthals, a Native American hip, Lucy's, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens. By the way, all creationists would agree that all of these hips, except for the chimpanzee, are human. So as creationists, we've sequenced the genome of Neanderthal. They're fully human. Homo erectus also, all creationists agree, is human. Homo sapiens, they should be lumped together into the same species, as some evolutionists argue even. Native Americans. And so notice Lucy's, though. Compare Lucy's pelvis to the chimpanzee and to the Homo sapiens. Which does Lucy's hip look most similar to?
Yeah.
I mean,
if you took the names off there, Chris, if you took the Native American Neanderthal, if you took all those names off of there, you could do like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't sing, man. That's going to drive people away. But that is a Sesame Street example right there, that you don't even need the names on there. You can look at that and say, okay, one of these things is quite different. There's no doubt about that.
It is. And the thing is it's short, broad, and bowl-shaped. That's the key. Human hips have a bowl-shaped pelvis, holds our organs. It's very distinctive. And I believe it's also true if you go back to the fossil record. And so notice also the flaring of the iliac blades, meaning meaning the hips flare widely in the Native American and Homo erectus and Neanderthals. And a lot of creationists have been saying if you have widely flaring iliac blades, like Lucy, it means you're ape, which is silly because Native American, this pelvis has it, Neanderthal has it. Even in their secular journals, they say, look at the marked flare of Neanderthal specimen SH1. So just because you have flaring blades does not mean it therefore is an ape. In fact, I would argue only humans can have laterally flaring blades because our blades wrap around the pelvis. And so when I look at a chimpanzee, the blade lies flat. It doesn't flare out. It's flat. And if you look at it in a side view, it's the same thing. Let me show you a side view really quick of the pelvis. Notice the chimpanzee in a side view. It's almost like a blade. See how thin it is?
Yeah.
Look at Homo sapiens. This is a side view, right? Or anterior view. So look at the Lucy's pelvis. Does Lucy's pelvis in a side view look blade-like and very tall and elongated like a chimp, or more like a human? I mean, wow. I mean that's regardless of the reconstruction, because the most controversial part of the hip was a small region surrounding the sacroiliac joint. That's the part where the sacrum articulates to the half hip bone. And that was the damaged region. That was the damaged region that has been controversial, but only amongst creationists. And I don't share that particular view because they've done reconstructions without even fixing that part, and it still looks short, broad, and bowl-shaped because the overall shape of the pelvis had clear joins between the pieces. So it wasn't like a mystery about how to put it together. And that's the part that makes it look distinctly human, is the better preserved part.
What happened from your research? Have you ever checked? What is it that drew creationists into this interpretation that, this hip was not human? Have you found anything on that?
Why have creationists from the onset have been arguing it's an ape? I think it has a lot to do with some outdated ways of thinking. For example, there's been this old view amongst evolutionists even that if there is a skull that has a cranial capacity, meaning the volume of the skull is small, then therefore it must be an ape. And so they would say if it's beyond a certain cubic centimeters, then they would say it must be human, like a Rubicon, like a line drawn in the sand. Anything above this threshold must be human. Anything below it must be ape. The problem is we're now finding human skulls that are very tiny, yet unmistakably human in the entire anatomy of the individual. And you can have pathologies or just all kinds of reasons to explain that. But before we go on to that, I do think it has to do with, though, the cranial capacity of Lucy was small, they think, and small stature. And really it goes back to this claim about Lucy's hip being fraudulently reconstructed. And I could show you that clip if you want. This was from a special that was on TV, and I have a clip of it here.
The ape that stood up, it was a revolutionary idea. We needed Owen Lovejoy's expertise again, because the evidence wasn't quite adding up. The knee looked human, but the shape of her hip didn't. Superficially, her hip resembled a chimpanzee's, which meant that Lucy couldn't possibly have walked like a modern human. But Lovejoy noticed something odd about the way the bones had been fossilized.
When I put the two parts of the pelvis together that we had, this part of the pelvis has pressed so hard and so completely into this one that it caused it to be broken into a series of individual pieces which were then fused together in later fossilization. This has caused the two bones, in fact, to fit together so well that they're in an anatomically impossible position.
The perfect fit was an illusion that made Lucy's hip bones seem to flare out like a chimp's. But all was not lost. Lovejoy decided he could restore the pelvis to its natural shape. He didn't want to tamper with the original, so he made a copy in plaster. He cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. It was a tricky job, but after taking the kink out of the pelvis, it all fit together perfectly, like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. As a result, the angle of the hip looks nothing like a chimp's, but a lot like ours.
So notice the configuration he's showing. I have the same, I have copies of Lucy's hip before the reconstruction of the sacroiliac joint.
Okay.
So let me show you that, but first I'll show you a picture of it. So notice, this is Lovejoy, the one who was just in the video. Johansson was the narrator. Lovejoy shows a picture of the hip, and it's hard to understand the configuration, but he basically turns the hip so that you can see the top view of it on its side. So it has like a thin point of view here. Notice it's bent. See that bent portion right there? That is unmistakably damaged beyond, 90-degree bend in it. He's completely correct. That had to be corrected. Now the issue is, well, there's several problems with this popular creationist claim, I hate to say, but one is the fact that there's been reconstructions that have been done without even fixing that part. And look here's 4 different reconstructions. All of them are virtually identical in overall proportions, but the birth canal is getting a little bit more elongated, even more human looking in this one. But notice, he did not fix that bend. You probably can't see it as well. He never fixed the sacroiliac joint. It didn't make any difference in terms of the overall human anatomy, which again is short, broad, and bowl-shaped. And the sacrum was not even affected by this in a dramatic way. So here's something that's pretty fascinating. Let me show you this part right here. This really brought a lot of clarity to me. Notice in the picture you can see the sacrum articulated to Lucy's half hip bone. This is before it was corrected. And notice the half hip bone is sticking out, straight out.
Yeah.
You see that? That's the sit bone. The sit bone is pointing straight out at the belly button. I mean, you can't have your hip sticking out of your body. We all would agree with that. How can your hip be turned 90 degrees upward and sticking out of your abdomen? That makes no sense. So there's no doubt he had to turn it downward by fixing that part. But that part that he fixed, even if you don't fix it, it leaves a small gap right here without fixing it. It didn't change the overall shape of the sacrum, which was found very well preserved and intact. And the clear joins between the rest of the hip clearly fits together in a human configuration. So my point is, even if they didn't touch the sacroiliac joint, good luck trying to explain this part because it's diagnostically human.
And that sacrum is absolutely totally human.
I mean, yeah, look, here's a comparison of humans, 2 humans right here, and then Lucy's. I just scaled it for size, but if you look at the original size of Lucy, without scaling it, size, but even when you scale it to size for an average-sized human, I mean, come on. Does that look anything like a chimp sacrum? And you compare it to any primate sacrum you want. I have a whole photo atlas. Lucy's hip is unmistakably human in every diagnostic feature of the hip. And
wow.
I'll add one more thing, Carl.
Yes.
This is incredible. This is when I had the eureka moment, if you will, because we have Lucy's sacrum right here in this picture here. Now, when I saw this on Google, and I was in the middle of praying about this exact issue in the moment that I saw this, and my eyes were open, and I was like, wait a second, kind of like talking to the Lord, like, this does not look like Lucy's hip. It's Lucy's sacrum, but that's the hobbit's half hip bone. And I thought, how is that possible? Well, it turns out this comes from a scientific journal. William Jungers from Stony Brook. He's a paleoanthropologist, card-carrying evolutionary paleoanthropologist, and he incredibly fit together Lucy's sacrum and fit it together to the hobbit's half hip bone, and it fit perfectly. Wow. Now, what is the hobbit? That's the question our audience might be wondering. Well, what's the hobbit? Like, we're not talking about J.J.R. Tolkien, right? We're talking about a Homo sapien. Some debate that, some say it's Homo erectus, but for creationists, we all agree it's human. We lump it with Homo sapiens because it's so remarkably similar. So all creationists agree, at this point in time, hobbit is fully human. And interestingly enough, hobbit is a small-bodied human, a pygmy. And there are still pygmies living on the island today, not far from where they found the hobbit. Indonesian island of Flores. There are still small-bodied humans living in the region. And so the hobbit is clearly human, and the hip bone articulates not to an ape sacrum, it articulates to a human. I'm calling Lucy's sacrum human. That, to me, is remarkable because the surface, the auricular surface it's called, on the human sacrum is very specifically shaped so that it corresponds with the human hip bone, the nominate. The sacroiliac joint fits together almost like lock and key. It's like a nice fit. And so you just can't simply take a human sacrum and fit it to an ape half hip bone. It would only work. It would only work if both are human and both are the same size. So what's my conclusion? Lucy, like the Hobbit, is a small-bodied human, has small hips, but they're still human.
Okay.
And by the way,
but what about? I'm sorry.
Last thought.
What about the clip?
There,
there's a clip.
yeah.
There's a clip that I use all the time that they talk about, and this is where I think some of the confusion comes in, because what we've been talking about very specifically so far is that one specific fossil, the most famous one found is 1974 by Don Johanson. Am I right?
Yeah, we're talking about the partial skeleton nicknamed Lucy in 1974. We're not talking about the other bones attributed to Lucy's kind, which has a name, a species name called Australopithecus afarensis.
And that's where I think the deception starts coming in, because now I play these clips where they're talking about, look at this, Lucy, very big, prominent eyebrow ridges, big protruding eyebrow ridges. But did we see that on the skeleton called Lucy? Did we see those types of features on Lucy?
No, I don't believe you do. First of all, just because you have a pronounced brow ridge, that doesn't mean you're therefore ape. I mean, look at the Homo erectus type, Neanderthals. All creationists agree there's a Homo sapiens. Even today, you might see someone at the store and like, whoa, you might do a double take, right? So that's not a diagnostic feature. But Lucy's skull was incredibly fragmentary. There's about 7 pieces of bone.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, that doesn't give you the clear indication that it was ape, because it's just not the diagnostic parts of the skull, like the foramen magnum, for example. It doesn't really give you any clear indicator one way or the other. So why do they show Lucy with an ape-like skull? Well, it's because they found other skulls more complete at an entirely separate stratigraphic position, an entirely separate locality, and those were better preserved, and they reconstructed it, and they do in fact look just like an ape.
Yeah.
But how can you therefore connect that isolated skull to Lucy's skeleton? Well, you can't. That's an inference, and I don't think the inference is warranted.
Yeah, see that's what I've always thought. That's where the deception starts coming in, is because one of the quotes that you gave that really impacted me the most, that I'd never heard before, Chris, was the one where you gave that in the exact same place that they found Lucy, quote unquote, they also found ape as well as other human bones. Am I right in that?
Well, we gotta be careful there, because if you look at this photo here, I'm showing you the total collection of bones that Johansen and his team found during his early expeditions, called the International Afar Research Expeditions. They happened between 1973 and around 1970, I forgot, 77, 76. But the point is that this collection of bone, this big picnic table here, there are different sites where they found different sets of bones. So Lucy was found in 1974 at locality AL 288. That means Afar locality, because Lucy was found in the Afar region of Ethiopia in East Africa. So the Afar locality 288 actually, it was excavated. It was a hillside that was excavated, and the footprint of the hill was about the footprint of a 2-car garage, and they sifted 20 tons of sediment over a period of a few weeks. They would basically pick out the bones with a sifter in the river, wash out the excess sediment, and pick out the bones. Now, the problem with that is the bones that we do find are diagnostically, the ones that are well preserved enough to tell you what it is, are human. But there was a mistakenly added bone of a baboon vertebra that was accidentally included with the skeleton for decades before they recognized it and called it out in 2015. So that does leave open the question, is it possible there are true ape bones included with the skeleton of Lucy? I've investigated that, and to this day, I still cannot find any other bones in Lucy's skeleton that are truly ape. There could be, but they might be the bones that are not diagnostic, like the ribs, because the ribs are fragmentary, and who can tell? You can only tell one of the ribs, the rib number 1, and that one, by the way, has features that are considered diagnostically human. So the only rib that you can identify is human. The sacrum is human. The half hip bone is human. I would argue even the ankle configuration, the talus with the fibula and tibia, the tibia and fibula, the way that they fit together in a certain way indicates it's human. So, I'm yet to find bones that are distinctly ape in Lucy's skeleton.
Okay. Now, I'm trying to remember specifically, though, there was that quote that you had given, and I thought it was from National Geographic when they first talked about discovering Lucy. They actually said that human bones, hominin bones, had been found in the same area, but then later on it was changed, and it was then very specifically said, no, these are just ape.
Yeah, you're good for you. Exactly right. So here in this picture, I'm showing you hillside, a far locality, 333. It was nicknamed First Family Site because Johansen found about 216 bones excavated between 1975 and 1976. I believe they returned to that site later on and found a fourth metatarsal bone, which was published in 2011 by Ward in the journal Science, and Carol Ward. And by the way, this is amazing because all creationists would agree that fourth metatarsal bone of the foot is diagnostically human. Now, at that, and I agree, that foot is human. Now, sadly, they attribute that to a so-called missing link, which they're trying to make into the museum displays type idea. But the bottom line is that's a human bone. It was found by itself, not connected to anything else. So as creationists, we shouldn't just be quick to assume that's Lucy's kind. I would say it's a human. It looks human because it is human. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But
it's like the Hadar knee, right? It's like the Hadar knee. Well, it looked humans.
Yeah.
Because it is human.
We'll get there. Yeah, I think the Hadar knee, that small AL129 knee joint, is diagnostically human, and that's more evidence of a small-bodied human living in the Hadar region. That's the second individual that's small-bodied, because Lucy was found in a separate site as the AL129 knee joint. But let me get this point, though. Remember that site I just mentioned, AL333, where all creationists agree they found a human foot bone. That is the same site where Johansen excavated 216 bones. And originally, in the journal Nature, him and his colleagues, French paleoanthropologist Maurice Taïeb, they published in the Journal of Nature that their collection consists of Homo and Australopithecus. And that was before that was in 1970, I believe 1976. And at that in this journal, if I'm not mistaken, they were not describing the family site per se. But in 1976 National Geographic, Johansen does describe the first family collection of bones. And in that collection, guess what he attributes them to? He doesn't attribute them to Australopithecus afarensis because at that time he hadn't invented the species name. In fact, he claimed that his first family site was Homo, which means human. He attributed those bones to human. And I can give you examples of bones like hand bones, foot bones, jaws, and teeth that he is describing looking just like humans. And if you want, I can go into detail of that. But here's an example, the AL333 hand. Even to this day, evolutionary paleoanthropologists describe it as just like modern humans. And the way we can tell is because it has a diagnostic feature. Human hands have a very long thumb relative to our other four fingers. And that allows us to have pad-to-pad precision gripping. Apes don't have that. They have a shortened hand. They have long fingers, but they have, let me show you a picture of the hand here. They have long fingers, but very short thumbs. Humans have a distinctive anatomy in that sense. And so here's from Nature Communications, a scientific source. They say the hand is one of the most distinctive traits of humankind. The human hand can be distinguished from that of apes by its long thumb relative to fingers. So that AL333 hand is diagnostically human, just like the foot bone. And there are other bones in that collection that are also unmistakably human. And so, in a sense, I agree with Johansen's original interpretation. That site has true human bones. They found so many foot bones from that site, they can put it together, and guess what they found out about the foot when they assemble it all into a single foot? It has all the diagnostic features of a modern human foot.
Okay, so Chris, all of these bones were found with Lucy's family's bones. These are all human bones found with quote unquote Lucy's family's bones?
Yeah, so keep it. Yeah, just to be clear with the audience, these were not found with Lucy's skeleton at site AL2.
Right.
Nobody is claiming that. So just to be clear, these are found at an entirely separate site called AL333, a different stratigraphic site. A different, but when you look at the bones that they find and assemble them, for example, the composite foot here and the composite hand, it has the features that are diagnostic of humans. Humans have the large toe in line with the other toes. Apes have more like a thumb-like appendage used for grasping on their foot. It's almost like another set of hands. And so this foot also has the longitudinal arch, just like humans, the adducted hallux, meaning the toe is in line with the other four, as I mentioned. This is a distinctive, unmistakable example of a human foot. And that makes sense because that's where they found the AL333-160 fourth metatarsal more recently that is diagnostically human as well. Now, evolutionists, though, they'll just say, well, that's fine with us because we think Lucy's kind walked upright. So we're okay with Lucy having human-looking feet. But I'm saying, yeah, but you can't claim that creature had an ape skull because they weren't found with an ape skull. So they're inventing a missing link out of true human bones, not being able to connect it to a skull, and therefore they can get away with it. But not anymore. Because you can't find an isolated bone and call it ape and attribute it to an ape-like creature just because your theory demands it. You have to have evidence for that.
Here's my disconnect. Why is it then that nature, I have the image that shows this is a chimpanzee, the curvature of the toes, the curvature of the fingers. Here's a chimpanzee, here's a human being, and the further to the right you go, the more curved it is. And to the furthest right are the bones attributed to Lucy. Her kind, not Lucy the specimen, because they didn't find any hand and foot bones for that individual, right? But they show the curvature, I mean, more curved than a chimpanzee. That definitely can't be these AL333 bones.
Well, actually, I hear they say it's intermediate. I don't think I've heard them say even more so. But, you know, I could be proven wrong if you show me the source. But notice this, though. What's diagnostic about the human foot is not the toes being curved, because even humans can have curved toes. For instance, Homo naledi, found in South Africa from the Dinaledi chamber. They found thousands of bones. They found a very well-preserved, intact foot. And the foot has all the diagnostic features of a human foot. That's why they call it Homo. It's in the human genus. And all creationists that I know agree Homo naledi has all the features that you would say are attributed to humans. There's only a few creationists who said, well, maybe Homo naledi could be more like an ape. And guess what their evidence for that is? The flaring iliac blades of Lucy, which I believe is human. So the very evidence they use to dehumanize Naledi is based on a creationist misconception that flaring ilia means ape when it doesn't. It means human. And so that further strengthens my argument. But notice Homo naledi, being fully human, has the diagnostic human feet with the adducted hallux, the longitudinal, transverse, medial arches. They're all there. Guess what? Has curved toes. And so does the small-bodied human from the Philippine island. And here's a picture of it. Notice the top part of the toe is markedly curved. There's no evidence of apes ever being on the Philippine Islands. This is a human toe. It was found with human teeth. There's no mistaking it. Humans can, in fact, have some strange features like curved toes. That doesn't mean they're ape because the overall anatomy overrules that. They have the upright, rigid foot just like humans, not the flexible midfoot with a grasping toe like apes. Fundamentally different. You just can't do it.
I know I'm geeking out on this one, and Candace, I apologize to you because you're like so graciously sitting over there.
I'm just letting you geek out. Go for it, Carl.
And I appreciate it. But this stuff is fascinating to me, and I think we need to care about it because, guys, if in fact, and I think we've debunked very clearly that Lucy is an evolutionary ancestor, ape-like ancestor between apes and humans. It doesn't matter. That's been clearly debunked. The fact that Lucy was a female, man, that's such an argument there that's an interesting thing as well. We made up a shirt. I got a shirt that says Lucy was a dude, and I have it on just to have people to get conversations on this type of a thing. But this is a topic that we should care about as Christians because if in fact it's true, we're in trouble. You know, God didn't really give us the whole truth if this part is true, and it is not true. But this revelation about the human bones, originally Lucy was classified as Homo. What do people say about that today? How has this slipped through the cracks, so to speak? And I've heard nobody else ever speak about this stuff, Chris. Nobody.
Yeah. So people are unaware that Johansson's original interpretation, before he was influenced by Tim White, we'll talk about that, his original interpretation was that his Hadar site was a co-mixture, had both Homo and Australopithecus bones together. And I would say if the Australopithecus bones are true ape bones, mixed or found with Homo bones at these separate sites, that would really paint a picture of the biblical model, because the Bible teaches that apes and humans were created on the same day of creation, on day 6. We've always coexisted. Some types have gone extinct. We find them as fossils, and those are the ones they're trying to make into missing links. But according to the biblical view, apes and humans have always coexisted.
Amen.
But according to evolutionists, they would say, no, there's a period of time when only apes were around, and apes gave rise to the earliest Homo type. And the problem with that thinking is this. The exact evidence I'm showing you contradicts it, because I'm showing you bones that they claim date to about 3.2 million years old or older. And if they're that old, according to their view, you shouldn't find any human bones. That would be like finding a Precambrian rabbit fossil. It would falsify their theory. You can't find these out-of-place bones before... That'd be like saying you're born before your grandparents. Can you be born before your grandparents? You can't be. So my view is this. The reason why this hip bone of Lucy, this knee joint of AL129 looks so human, the toe bone, as we mentioned, the foot, the hand, the reason why all these bones look so human is not because Lucy had human feet as an ape creature that could walk upright. They look human simply because they were human. And that falsifies the ape to man story. It shows the dating methods are flawed and further supports the biblical model of coexistence. And I think that's exciting. And Carl, I have one point I really got to cover here. Because there's a lot of confusion about what people are saying about Australopithecus afarensis, Lucy's kind. And they say there's extreme sexual dimorphism. And Johansen was saying that, their interpretation was, well, maybe there's a reason why there's bones that look more human-like and other bones that look more ape-like.
One second, Chris. Before you go into that, what do you mean by sexual dimorphism? I want people to understand that, because that's an important point.
Yeah, so great question. So think about gorillas. The females are smaller on average than males. We see this in a lot of mammalian species. The males and females can be different sizes. But what's unique about the kind that Lucy is attributed to is that Johansen is trying to claim a type of sexual dimorphism that has never been observed. Because it's not just a matter of size. It has to do with fundamental differences in anatomy and locomotion. And so he'd argue that, for example, the smaller ones could have been more ape-like and spent more time in the trees, and the larger ones were more human-like and spent more time walking habitually upright like humans. And other people have called that into question, and they say, well, no. The reason why there's two dichotomies in the anatomy of the bones is because some are Homo, human, and some are Australopithecus, more like apes. That's not creationist. That's in the secular peer-reviewed literature. I have several papers citing in my book those examples where they've been conflicted. Sadly, today the consensus today in the paleontology field is that Johansen was right. The problem is people like Richard Leakey, to the day he passed away, still disagreed with Johansen. And I talked to him through email in 2018, and he still maintained Lucy's kind has Homo and Australopithecus, and it shouldn't be it's not a legitimate species. And I have a direct quotes from him saying that. So all I'm trying to show is that the sexual dimorphism doesn't hold up. It's better explained by two different species, two different kinds, an ape kind and a human kind. But there are large bones and small bones. For example, in this picture, I'm showing you the famous AL129 knee joint. Now, it wasn't found with Lucy's skeleton. That's a misconception that some creationists who are not very serious creationists in the past have blundered embarrassingly. No, the AL129, this is the fossil number. AL means a far locality 129. That's a separate location than Lucy, AL288. So we know right away this is a different finding. But that knee joint has all the diagnostic features of a human knee. And interestingly enough, so does the AL3334 distal end of the femur, which is part of the knee joint. And remember, what site was that found at? That was found at the family
one. Yeah.
And that's the site where we're finding all these human bones. And Johansen originally himself called human. So that's evidence that it's not sexual dimorphism. It's that there were small-bodied humans living in the same region with larger average-sized humans, just like we see today in Central Africa. There are about 1 million pygmies living in the central region of Africa today. And there are also ordinary-sized humans living together. Why is that extraordinary? It shouldn't be. It looks similar to what we see today. And so my view is simple. These bones are fully human. It falsifies the ape man's story. It's exciting being a Christian. We can make sense of the fossil record. You can trust the Bible.
And I love it. By the way, Dr. Chris has a book that he has co-authored with another guy that I highly respect, Dr. John Sanford, called Contested Bones. And you can get this on Amazon. You can get it on your website as well, right? Back to Genesis. Chris, is it up on there? Back2Genesis.org?
Yeah, it just links to the Amazon page, though.
Okay. So get it at Amazon. As soon as that book came out, I got it. And I was like, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in human evolution and going and looking at the actual evidence, which we really should be doing, Dr. Chris and Dr. John will give you some really, really good information. Contested Bones, you want to get a copy of it. I'm telling you, it's good. I really, really enjoyed it. And also, let me tell you about Chris's website, because his website has got a lot of articles and videos and things like that you really want to be aware of. Back2Genesis.org. And then there's an article section. I think if you just put /articles on there, it'll take you to where he's got a video that I want you to tell folks about, and some articles as well. Chris, what kind of stuff would they find on your website?
The website has some articles, and it links to also a feature film that our ministry produced in 2020 called Dismantled. And people are welcome to look at the human evolution section in that, scene 3, and also genetic evidence for Adam and Eve, and some information on, do animals evolve? You know, how do you sort out microevolution versus macroevolution? That's for free on our site, and I also have a YouTube channel. But if you go to the feature film, that goes directly to my YouTube channel, so you can do one and done.
Yeah. Good stuff. I really encourage you to take a look at that. You know, Chris, earlier on, and this is going to geek again, you made the comment about, cranial capacity indicating human or ape. And I'm having this conversation right now, as a matter of fact, because I'm going to be taking some people through the Los Angeles Museum of Natural History. I love taking people through tours on the looking at the actual stuff. Here's what they have. And Turkanaboy is one of the big things that they want to show there, right? Homo ergaster, and how this is an ape human, because the cranial capacity was only 800 to 900 cc. So this therefore proves that this was an ape-like ancestor to humans, because the cranial capacity was so small. Isn't it true that we find human beings, completely and totally human beings, with the same range of cranial capacity, 800 to 900 cc's? I mean, they're totally human, right?
I think it was Daniel Lyon is his name. He won the Pulitzer Prize and award for writing. It was in, what was his cranial capacity? 625, I think his cranial capacity was. So no, humans, and sadly, some people have a disease called microcephaly. They can have a cranial capacity as small as 300 something, which is in the range, which is actually, I think, smaller than the average for chimps, for example, I believe. So you can have very small cranial capacities, and if you're a small human, guess what? You're going to have, by nature of that, a smaller skull, smaller cranial capacity. So, but amazingly, remember the Hobbit from the island of Flores?
Right.
That has a very small cranial capacity, and it's a better preserved skull, very well preserved skull, and the cranial capacity is around 420. And Lucy's so fragmentary, they have to estimate it. But when they estimate the cranial capacity of Lucy's skull, guess what they use as a model to reconstruct it for its size? Apes. They use apes, not humans. So there's already a bias because, again, they have this idea of large brains evolving after upright walking. Yeah. So they believe at Lucy's time, you must have a small brain. Their worldview constrains that and enforces that interpretation onto the skull. So I would just say in museum displays, say, look, the cranial capacity is very subjective, and the bones of the skull are not diagnostic. So we really can't say much about the skull, and that's where you can leave it at.
Wow. Well, Candace, you got anything? I mean, you've been sitting here so quietly. Anything that jumps out to you that you would want to ask?
No, that's fine. It's fascinating because, Carl was just kind of explaining, and he's like, I haven't given my human evolution talk since I heard this new information from you, Chris. And so it's definitely like really cool to think on and hear about for me for the first time. And so, it's been great listening to Carl and you geek out.
Yeah. Well, there's so much more I could say, and
I'm sure
I could make is that the big hang up for a lot of creationists is the limb proportions, because they say, well, look at Lucy has these longer arms relative to shorter legs, and therefore it's ape. The problem is, though, is that it's called the humeral femoral index. You can measure the humerus, the long arm bone, and the long bone of the leg, the femur, and you get an index, you get a value. Well, it turns out, again, hobbit has identical humerus and femur length proportions, virtually identical to Lucy's. So that right there shows you there's variation in humans, and there's also a large chunk of bone missing from, or a significant portion, I should say, of Lucy's femur. There's missing material. So there's also subjectivity in how much space you fill in that gap to make the femur bone longer or shorter. Same with the humerus.
Yeah.
So there's it's not like it's a clear-cut measurement necessarily.
Yeah.
Man.
So
how long have you been studying this, man?
Oh, man. Honestly, I've been looking into this for years, probably like 15 years, but I didn't get serious into it until I started working with Dr. John Sanford. He's a former atheist from Cornell, and he's a geneticist, but we teamed up together, and I did a lot of research on human evolution and the genetic evidence showing these are very inbred. We've sequenced Neanderthal genomes that show severe inbreeding. Same thing with Denisovans. We think the hobbit also shows signs of inbreeding. So as a creationist model, I think we in a sense agree with evolutionists. These types were very isolated. I think, though, that they were post-Babel, and they were isolated people groups. They have certain features that appear to be indicators of a severe, high inbreeding coefficient. What I'm trying to say, though, is I lost touch of what you were saying. So I've been studying this since for many years. But when I worked with Dr. Sanford, I studied it in depth for 4.5 years and published a book in Contested Bones in 2017, updated it in 2019 with more Lucy stuff. And I'll update it again soon on why I think Lucy is a pygmy human. And so for many years of my life, I've been wrestling with these fossils. And the more I look at it, the more I study it, the more it completes a very simple biblical pattern of coexistence of ape and humans.
I do want to know. So, you've talked about biblical creationists, and they're still thinking on this. At least that you told us that before we started recording. Yeah. But what is the secular? What do evolutionists say about your research and what you've come out with?
Well, I haven't engaged with them on it yet, and I'm sure they're
okay.
putting some video together to challenge it. But I suspect that where they will go is they'll look to other fossil findings to kind of corroborate their view that there are true human-looking, from the neck down, creatures that lived in the past. And they might cite Ardipithecus' hip, for example, which, by the way, was so poorly damaged that the researchers described it as roadkill. So if their best comparison is something called roadkill, and I'm aware of their claims, what they might say, I really think you should use the better preserved example as your general rule, not the poorly one. So I do think the evolutionists will have a hard time with this because they've been saying for years that you creationists are insane. How can you not acknowledge Lucy's hip looks human? And my answer to the atheist is, well, yeah, it looks human because it is. It's that simple.
Yeah.
The reason why Lucy looks like she walked upright is because Lucy did walk upright because it's a human.
Yeah.
And so my answer is very simple, and they have a hard time with that, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think you've nailed it. I mean, like I told you, man, you've totally sold me, and now I've got to go back and redo my my human evolution talk. Thank you very much. But
you're welcome.
We need to be about that, though. We really do. We want to ensure that what we're doing is accurate and we're not misleading, because we don't want to throw out straw man arguments and mock and that kind of a thing. Wow. So, Chris, I got to say thank you, man. And anytime if you've got anything that like you get the updated book and you want to come back on and talk about it, please let us know, because I genuinely appreciate what you're doing, and I want to get the message out there. I want this to be heard, and not just in the creationist community, but outside of the Christian community and the secular community as well. Because go look at the evidence. You know, I bought a T-shirt, right, and it's not meant for a creationist at all, and it says "Science doesn't care what you think." Yeah, and I was like, as a creationist, I absolutely agree with that. You know, and so we want to just deal with the dragnet approach, just the facts. Let's deal with the facts. And so, thank you for doing that. Thank you for bringing so many of them.
You're welcome. I just want to close on the point that as creationists, don't be afraid to go. The anatomy doesn't lie, and ape and human anatomy, there are certain diagnostic features that clearly separate them. We can't just follow group think. You have to actually go to the bones Don't be afraid to examine the anatomy and just go with your gut. If it looks human, it's human. It's that simple. And so I think that glorifies God because it's closest to the truth. The truth is God created man in his image. We're not created in the image of apes. God has a plan and purpose for our life, but we need to understand that we didn't come from apes. God created Adam and Eve, and we are like them. We are fallen. We have sinned. We have all fallen short of the glory of God. Don't put your hope in a few broken, scattered bones from this hillside in Africa. Put your trust in Jesus, and that's the message I want to tell people. We can put our hope fully in Jesus. Again, don't put your faith in broken bones that happen to fit with the biblical view anyway.
Well, Dr. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all the information that you shared. Again, you can go to his website, find more information on this topic and the research that he's done. But we just want to end this episode like we do every episode, and that's with our gospel video, because you heard him at the end. He said, you know what? You can look at all these scattered bones, but what's really important is that you trust in Jesus. Yeah. So if you've never heard the gospel, here it is right now. Adios, everyone.
Buckle up, because this is the most important thing you'll ever hear, straight from the pages of the inerrant, infallible Word of God. The Bible teaches that God created everything, and he called his creation very good. He created man in his image. Then he made woman from the man, and man named her Eve. God gave them dominion over all creation, and he also gave them free choice. Man and woman were in perfect paradise, naked and unashamed, with only one restriction. They were commanded not to eat from a certain tree in a garden where God had placed them. God warned them that if they disobeyed him, it would be sin, and death would follow. Now, being tempted by Satan through a serpent, Eve ate from the forbidden tree, then gave the fruit to the man, and he ate it too. Thus, mankind had sinned against God. Now, a holy God must deal justly with sin, so he did. Because man had dominion over all God created, the entire universe was cursed, and we all now live in a corrupt and fallen world full of death, suffering, pain, evil, tears, and toil. The sin nature had entered reality, and since then we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and the consequences are terrifying. Dead in our trespasses, we are all doomed to eternal destruction, away from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his might, and there's nothing you or I can do to save ourselves. That's fantastic news, isn't it? No, it's not. It's the worst news ever. But here's the good news. Here's the gospel. God loves us so much that he sent his one and only Son to rescue us, Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, fully God and fully man. Born of a virgin, conceived by the Holy Spirit, Jesus lived a perfect and sinless life, which makes him uniquely qualified to pay for our sins and rescue us from God's wrath. Not only did he step down into humanity, but he was executed on a cross in our place. He was pierced for our sins and crushed for our rebellion. Upon him is our punishment, and by his wounds we are healed. Amazing love, amazing grace. But that's not all. Jesus, after being placed in a tomb for 3 days, resurrected, thus conquering the last enemy, death. So powerful is the work and name of Jesus that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. So wonderful is his mercy and grace that all who call upon his name, confess with their mouths, and believe in their hearts that he was raised from the dead, shall be saved. And the one who Jesus saves is no longer condemned, but is completely set free, and will dwell in the unimaginable new heavens and new earth with Jesus and his co-heirs forever. There will be no more pain, no more sin, no more suffering, no more death, no more evil, and no more tears or toil, for Christ himself will make all things new. This is the full gospel, and like I said, the most important thing you'll ever hear. The views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Reasons for Hope or its affiliates. To find out more about the core beliefs and values of Reasons for Hope, visit our website at r4h.com or download our app by searching Reasons for Hope on your favorite app store. Thanks for watching.